401. What's that for? Let's go and see. Sonia curiously pulled David to go over. That's a stone bet. It's like this every day. I really don't understand what these men are yelling at a pile of broken stones all day long. Ji Linger said, very puzzled. David was not curious at first, but after hearing Ji Linger talking about gambling stones, he immediately became interested. Maybe he could choose a few jade stones and make some jewelry for Sonia. In the eyes of these men, this pile of stones just thinks that high-end cosmetics have the same status in the eyes of your women. David smiled lightly and walked over. Damn it, Emperor Green, the Emperor Green is out. Before David and the others had even walked, they heard a burst of applause from the crowd. Ha ha ha, I got rich, got rich. Immediately afterwards, someone was heard laughing wildly, and it was obvious that the stone was bought by this person. However, when David heard this voice, his brows slightly wrinkled, he seemed very familiar. On the other hand, Ji Linger's face turned cold. Ji Feng, this Ba Five-tard, came to gamble on stones. After speaking, Ji Linger rushed towards the crowd angrily. David also immediately remembered that this voice was the voice of Ji Linger's younger brother Ji Feng. As soon as David and the others approached, they saw Ji Feng holding a stone, laughing wildly, jumping and jumping, extremely happy. Young Master Ji, I'm really sorry, this stone doesn't belong to you, you can't take it away. At this time, a middle-aged man walked over to take the stone from Ji Feng's hand. How could Ji Feng give it to him, and immediately hug the stone on his body? Why isn't it mine? I bought this, do you want to go back on it when you open the Emperor Green? The middle-aged man smiled lightly and said, Young Master Ji, if you bought the stone, did you pay for it? I gave you money, but I gave you a deposit of 100,000. Ji Feng said loudly. Ha ha ha, who doesn't know the rules of the stone gambling world? You pay a deposit and the stone is yours. Isn't this a dream? The middle-aged man had a bit of disdain on his face. Boss Kui, how can you say that? In the past few times, I paid the deposit and opened the stone. At that time, it was all junk, and I didn't see you talking about the first-hand money and the first-hand goods. It was me who was behind. The final payment is for you. Ji Feng was a little anxious, and asked angrily, this time, the Emperor Green is opened. You tell me that you have money and goods. Isn't this a show of cheating on me? Hit you. This is the rule of the stone gambling world. Where did I pit you? Hand over the stone, or you won't want to leave. After Boss Kui finished speaking, the three big men surrounded Ji Feng in an instant. Ji Feng was timid, and his face turned pale in fright in an instant, but facing the priceless treasure of Emperor Green, he still didn't want to hand it over, so he held the stone tightly and said, Boss Kui, my sister is from the Dharma Protector Pavilion, you dare to move my sister can't spare you. What about the people in the Dharma Protector Pavilion? The people in the Dharma Guardian Pavilion must also obey the rules. Boss Kui smiled coldly. Ji Feng didn't let go of the stone, but when Boss Kui waved his hand, he was about to let someone grab it. This was Ji Linger rushing up, knocking down the three big men with 3 punches and 2 feet. Sister, seeing Ji Linger coming, Ji Feng instantly became excited. And Boss Kui's face turned cold. Miss Ji, as a person from the Dharma Protector Pavilion, how can you hurt people? Are you trying to oppress the people? You beat my brother, how can I not do it? Even if I beat you, it's self-defense. Ji Linger glared at the Boss Kui and said. Chapter 402. Miss Ji, you must have evidence when you speak. Which of your eyes saw me hitting your brother? Besides, your brother took my stone and didn't return it. This is robbing other people's property. You, the guardian of the law, don't care. Boss Kui was not afraid of Ji Linger at all, and asked with a sneer. Sister, don't listen to his nonsense, I bought this stone, I spent money. Ji Feng hurriedly explained to Ji Linger. Shut up for me. Ji Linger angrily shouted at Ji Feng, I'll take care of you when I get home. Ji Feng was really angry when he saw Ji Linger. He was holding the stone with both hands, and he lowered his head and didn't dare to speak. Boss Kui, I have heard what you said just now. In the past, my brother could pay the deposit and open the stone with you, but now the goods are out, and you say it can't be done again. This is obviously a trap for my brother. Ji Linger is not stupid, she can see that this is a trap given by the owner of the gambling stone shop. Miss Ji, you need to be in charge of what you say. We are all serious businessmen. Besides, there are so many fathers and villagers here. The rules of our gambling stone world are first-hand money and first-hand goods. I used to let him drive because he was pitiful. I'm not selling like this today, can't I? Is it against the law? Boss Kui looked at Ji Linger's aggressiveness, and for a while, Ji Linger was speechless. Give him the stone. At this time, David and Sonia also squeezed in from the crowd. Brother-in-law, Ji Yu Feng's eyes lit up when he saw David. Brother-in-law, this is Imperial Green, and it is worth at least a few million. How can you return it to them? Ji Yu Feng's brother-in-law terrified Ji Yu Linger and David. This was in front of Sonia. How could Ji Yu Feng scream indiscriminately? Sonia was taken aback, looked at David and Ji Yu Linger. Her face was full of doubts. Ji Yu Feng, you ba five tard, how many times have I told you, I have nothing to do with David, he is not your brother-in-law, why are you yelling? David's girlfriend is your sister Sonia, she is me classmates. Ji Yu Linger blushed and yelled at Ji Yu Feng loudly. Ji Yu Feng was stunned for a moment, only to realize that David was holding hands with Sonia. It turned out that David was not his sister's boyfriend, he had misunderstood. Although Ji Yu Feng was a little disappointed, at this time, he couldn't scream, so he rolled his eyes and hurriedly explained, what's wrong with me calling my brother-in-law? It's my sister Sonia's boyfriend, so I can't call my brother-in-law. Am I right, Sister Sonia? Ji Yu Feng met Sonia for the first time, but just like an old acquaintance, they called each other very close. Ji Yu Linger was fooled by Ji Yu Feng, and David's eyes flashed with admiration. Although this Ji Yu Feng is timid and cowardly, his reaction ability is really not ordinary. Sonia was also full of joy at Ji Yu Feng's call, and asked Ji Yu Linger, Linger, is this the naughty little brother you used to talk about in school? Ji Yu Linger nodded and couldn't help but glared at Ji Yu Feng. Sister Sonia, you have to decide for me. I bought this stone with money, and they are obviously trying to trick me. Ji Yu Feng knew that David's strength was not ordinary, and he would definitely not be an ordinary person if he could establish a relationship with Chifengtang. That's why he let Sonia decide for him. As long as Sonia speaks, can David be obedient? You must know that in today's society, men always listen to women. Sonia glanced at David. David, help him. Gufeng, return the stone to them. Since there are rules, then do things according to the rules. David said to Ji Yu Feng. Brother-in-law, this is Imperial Green, worth several million. Ji Yu Feng looked anxious and winked at David desperately. He thought David didn't know what Imperial Green was. Chapter 403. Give it to them, this stone is worthless. David said again. Ji Yu Feng still wanted to say something, but Ji Yu Linger said angrily, if you don't give it to others, you pig brain, you deserve to be tricked by people and improve your memory. Ji Yu Feng looked helpless, and finally gritted his teeth. He could only throw the stone to that boss Kui, and then lowered his head and looked decadent. I told you, this stone is worthless, it just has a very thin layer of Imperial Green, and if you cut it a little more, there is nothing in it. David patted Ji Yu Feng's shoulder to persuade him. Really? Ji Yu Feng raised his head and asked in surprise. If that's the case, then the stone is worthless, and it's not a loss for me. Of course it's true. David smiled lightly. Then Boss Kui also heard David's words, and sneered, I've been playing stone gambling for decades, so my eyesight is not as good as you, a hairy kid in his early 20s. With such a color, at least 3 pieces can be produced. If you don't believe it, you can cut it again and see. David said to the boss Kui. When the people around heard it, they immediately became interested and shouted, let's take a look at it again. Okay, then I'll cut a knife. Boss Kui said, and gave the stone to his subordinates, and then the subordinates skillfully cut the stone again. But after a knife was cut, there was really nothing inside, not even a bit of green. This time, everyone was stunned, and Boss Kui also widened his eyes and couldn't believe it. Continue to cut. Boss Kui yelled at his subordinates. Soon, another knife was cut, but there was still nothing. In the end, the whole stone was cut into thin pieces, and as a result, there was only a thin layer of Imperial Green, and nothing could come out, it was just waste, worthless. This time, Boss Kui was dumbfounded, and everyone around looked at David in shock. Ha ha ha, cool, so cool, hurry up and return the deposit to me. Ji Yu Feng laughed excitedly. If it weren't for David's arrival, it is estimated that this time he would lose miserably again. Boss Kui glared at David viciously, then looked at Ji Yu Feng and said, our shop's rules, the deposit will not be refunded, you can pick a stone inside. I don't want it anymore. I can't trust your store anymore. Return the deposit to me. Ji Yu Feng doesn't want to gamble on stones at their house. As I said, the deposit will not be refunded. Either you pick a rough stone or leave. Boss Kui said with a domineering look. Ji Yu Feng was about to get angry, but was stopped by David. Can these 100,000 pieces be arbitrarily picked out of rough stones? David asked. Of course, in this pile, you can choose whatever you want. Boss Kui said, pointing to the pile of rough stones behind him. David glanced at the rough stones and shook his head secretly, because there was no imperial green here, not even ice seeds. But when David's eyes swept to the messy pile of stones in his pocket, his body shook slightly. Are the stones over there just picked? David asked, pointing to the messy pile of stones. Those are all opened waste rocks. If you want to pick one, it's 10,000, just pick. Bosqui glanced at it and said, Brother-in-law, those are all waste rocks that have been opened, and there will be no good things. Ji Yufeng hurriedly persuaded David. These stones have all been opened, but they are only opened once, and then they are not opened, and they are directly repurchased by the gambling stone shop. The price is quite cheap. If a stone has been opened for 3 or 4 times, there will be a little residue, the value is gone. David ignored the ancient style, but walked directly over and picked it up from the pile of waste rocks. Soon, David picked out 10 waste stones. Looking at the stones that had been cut, the ancient wind sighed, feeling that 100,000 yuan was wasted. Chapter 404. But thinking that the money was also given to him by David, Ji Yufeng can't say anything anymore. If he makes David happy now, maybe he can give him money. After all, David is rich. That's all, let's go. David threw the stone in front of Bosqui and said. Bosqui looked at the pile of waste rocks in front of him and sneered, let's agree, if we can't open anything, we won't refund it. Don't say that I cheated you again and ruined my store's reputation. Don't talk nonsense, hurry up. David said coldly. Bosqui ordered to his subordinate, open. Soon, a piece of waste rock was taken to the machine, and then under the cutting blade, the waste rock was cut little by little. Ice seed stone, it's an ice seed. Those with sharp eyes will call out immediately. Sure enough, after the stone was opened, there was a crystal clear ice seed stone inside. Ha ha ha, ice seed stone, this time we don't lose. Ji Yufeng immediately laughed when he saw it. Although the ice seed stone is not very valuable, it can still be sold for 100,000 and 200,000. In this way, they will not lose money. I didn't expect you to be so lucky, the blind cat meets the dead mouse. Bosqui snorted coldly. David just laughed without saying a word, waiting to open other waste rocks. Soon, another waste rock was opened, and it turned out to be another ice rock. Immediately after the third block, the fourth block was all ice seeds. Everyone was dumbfounded, so Bosqui couldn't help but look at David. Ji Yufeng was excitedly holding the bag with the opened stones, and urged Bosqui, hurry up, don't grind. When the fifth waste rock was opened, a dazzling green light stunned everyone. Even Bosqui was stunned on the spot. Ji Yufeng was stunned for a moment, then jumped up like a madman, Imperial Green, this is Emperor Green. After being shocked, everyone couldn't help but talk. Who is this kid? I'm so lucky, I can get Emperor Green out of the scrap. Where is luck here? It's just an explosion of luck. Shut up, it's obvious that this young man is a connoisseur, it's just a matter of luck. Everyone was talking, and Bosqui's face had become very ugly. Don't be stunned, hurry up and drive us. Ji Yufeng said to Bosqui. We won't sell it, we won't sell the rest of the stones, I'll give you the money back. Bosqui collected the remaining stones by himself. David stepped forward and grabbed the wrist of Bosqui. I don't want money, I just want stones. This is money and goods. How can you go back? Yes, how can you go back? So many people are watching. Ji Yufeng also stepped forward to grab the Bosqui and said. HMPH, do you know whose store is here? Dare to touch me here. Bosqui snorted coldly, and instantly rushed out more than a dozen big men from the inside, seeing that these people were all trainers. What do you want to do? When I don't exist. Seeing this, Ji Yulinger was furious. After all, she was also a member of the Dharma Protector Pavilion, but these people ignored her. Don't say it's you, even if your pavilion masters come, I'm not afraid. This is the store where young Master Wu has a stake. Do you dare to cause trouble? Bosqui was full of pride, because he had the support of the Wu family behind him. You must know that the Wu family is one of the best in the provincial capital, and Wu Lui, the head of the Wu family, is also one of the 4 directors of the Wu Dao Alliance. Even if it's a shop opened by Lao Su, you will finish opening the stone for me. David's face was gloomy. Damn, I won't open, what else can you do to me? Bosqui slapped his face. Bang. David smashed it with one punch, and directly caused the nose and mouth of the Bosqui to bleed. This is still David's hand, otherwise this Bosqui would have had his head blooming. Chapter 405. Damn, you dare to hit me and kill them. Bosqui wiped a handful of blood and shouted directly at the thugs under him. More than a dozen thugs rushed up with sticks in an instant. Just as David was about to start, Ji Yulinger's sturdy body greeted him. Against those masters of the martial arts family, Ji Linger was not an opponent, but against these thugs, Ji Linger is still more than enough. Bang bang bang. In just a few minutes, all a dozen thugs were beaten to the ground by Ji Linger. This time, Ji Linger didn't keep his hands. Those thugs either broke their arms or broke their legs. Boss Kui, who saw this scene, stepped back again and said with a grim expression, okay. You have caused a big problem, and no one wants to leave today. After Boss Kui finished speaking, he directly took out his mobile phone and made a call, which was obviously to young Master Wu. You guys, hurry up and take your things and go, the Wu family is not easy to mess with. Someone persuaded David. Sister, we. Ji Yufeng became a little scared when he saw that Boss Kui was called. After all, the Wu family is not easy to mess with. Ji Yufeng, don't be afraid, there is me. Seeing Ji Yufeng's scared look, David said lightly. Ji Yufeng nodded and said, well, don't you know the people from Shifengtang? Call the people from Shifengtang, and you don't have to be afraid of the martial arts family. To deal with the mere martial family, where can you use the people from Shifengtang? David sneered. Seeing David being so arrogant, the people around couldn't help shaking their heads secretly. If the sky is crazy, there will be rain, and if people are crazy, there will be disaster. To dare to say this about the Wu family, I'm afraid it will be unlucky today. Soon, a young man in his early 20s was holding a folding fan, followed by a few people rushing over. Who the H3LL doesn't have long eyes, dare to make trouble in my Wujia store? Before the person arrived, the sound of scolding had already come. David glanced at the young man, and he looked a bit similar to Wu Lui, but his temperament and temperament were so different from each other. This son looks arrogant and domineering. It's just that David didn't feel the slightest fluctuation of energy in this young man. It was obvious that the other party was not a warrior. As a master of internal energy, how could his son not be a warrior? Just when David was puzzled, Boss Kui saw someone coming and hurriedly greeted him. Master Wu, it's them. Boss Kui pointed at David and the others, his eyes were full of anger. The young man glanced at David and Ji Yufeng, and then looked at the mourning thugs on the ground, his face turned cold. If you make trouble here and hurt my people, even if you miss Ji Yu is from the Dharma Protector Pavilion, yes, don't you want to give me an explanation? Wudong, it's your people who lied to my younger brother first, and it should be you who want to explain. Ji Linger glared at the young man and said. I only know that you are making trouble with me and hurting my people. I don't know anything about the rest. Now I apologize and compensate for my losses. Maybe I can spare your life. Wudong shook his folding fan with an extremely arrogant attitude. What if I say no? David looked at Wudong and said with a cold smile. Then don't leave. Wudong's voice sank, and a few people behind him surrounded David in an instant. There was only a skinny old man standing beside Wudong motionless. David glanced at them and found that these people were all internal strength warriors. They were not sure how much stronger they were than the little gangsters just now, and the skinny old man beside Wudong was full of energy, and his breath was stronger than that of the little gangsters just now. Wu Lui is not weak at all. Chapter 406. Either apologize or die, you choose. Wudong looked at David with a gloomy face. No one dared to say a word in front of him. David was the first. Can I choose the third one? David smiled slightly. The third one. Wudong was taken aback. That's to let you die. After David's death words were exported, the breath on his body suddenly exploded. The terrifying aura instantly caused the breathing of the few inner strength warriors who surrounded him to stagnate, and then he felt like he was being pressed by a huge boulder. Puff, puff. Several internal strength warriors all knelt down on one knee, their faces were in pain, and blood flowed out from the corners of their mouths. Everyone was amazed when they saw this scene. Especially the skinny old man, his eyes suddenly widened and his body trembled slightly. The terrifying breath just now made him almost fall to the ground. Fortunately, those breaths were not aimed at him, otherwise he would not be able to hold it at all. Who are you? The skinny old man asked David with a wary expression. My name is David Chen. David said lightly. When the skinny old man heard this, his face suddenly changed, and his eyes were full of horror. You are Mr. Chen. The skinny old man is the big housekeeper of the Wu family. Although he did not participate in the ring competition, he still heard about David's name. Moreover, Wu Lui sent him to the Zhang family villa to invite David many times in the past few days, but David's name was Ping is in retreat, but I haven't seen David. Now listening to David himself, thinking of David's terrifying aura just now, he can be sure that the young man in front of him is the one who killed Zhang Zhang. Mr. Chen, we have no eyes and offended Mr. Chen. I hope Mr. Chen will not take offense. the skinny old man said, and actually knelt in front of David. Zubo, what are you doing? Wudong's eyes widened, unable to believe the scene in front of him. You must know that in the Wu family, Chibo's identity and Wu Lui can be said to be on an equal footing, and their strength is also equal. Now he actually knelt down to a young man in his 20s. Isn't this a shame for the Wu family? Shut up. The skinny old man glared at Wudong, who was too frightened to say anything. David looked at the skinny old man kneeling on the ground, and didn't say anything, but said to Ji Yufeng, put things away, let's go. Ji Yufeng nodded, hurriedly packed all the stones, and then left with David. It was not until David's figure disappeared that the skinny old man dared to get up. Master Wu, our stones. Seeing that David took the stone away, Boss Kui hurriedly said to Wudong. Snapped. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw that the skinny old man gave the Boss Kui a mouth directly, causing the Boss Kui to be dizzy and his face was swollen. Chibo, what the H3LL is going on? Wudong asked with a puzzled face. Eldest young master, we have made a big mistake, we have to make a big mistake, this matter must be decided by the master. The skinny old man sighed and went back with Wudong. Wu family, Wu Lui was furious after hearing about it. Beast, Nizi, I killed you. Wu Lui slapped Wudong's head with a slap. But he was stopped by Chibo. Master, even if you kill the eldest young master, it will be useless. What we need to do now is to let Mr. Chen remove the bad impression of my Wu family. Yes, I will personally apologize to Mr. Chen. Wu Lui nodded again and again, hurriedly ran back to his room, and took out the hundreds of years of medicinal herbs that he had treasured. Wudong knelt on the ground, trembling, and said to Chibo with a face full of grievance, Chibo, who is that guy? Why are you and Dad afraid of him? Chapter 407. Eldest young master, don't talk about it, he is the one who killed Zhang Zhengzhong in the ring competition. He killed the Wei family and the Zhang family. Do you think the Wu family also followed the Zhang family's footsteps? Zeb said sharply. This time, Wudong's face turned ashen, scared to death, and he muttered, I don't know, what should I do? Beast, follow me. Wu Lui picked up Wudong and left. In the Zhang family villa, David, Sonia and Ji Linger were having dinner. Linger, don't go back to your little house at night, just stay here, just to be my company. Sonia followed Ji Linger and said. I'm not a light bulb. You two live together at night. What am I doing next to me? Listen to the sound. Ji Linger smiled. Sonia blushed, glared at Ji Linger and said, don't talk nonsense, we two are very innocent, we have never slept together. It's all established, it's okay to sleep together, and you can have a baby early. Ji Linger looked at Sonia with a playful expression and said. Put it down, I don't give birth so early, I haven't had enough. Sonia rolled her eyes. David didn't say a word, he hurriedly took a few bites of food and walked away. These two girls were together and dared to say anything. Sitting on the sofa, David planned to practice for a while, but saw a subordinate walk in. Mr. Chen, the head of the Wu family asks to see you. Said the subordinate. David was not surprised. With Wu Lui's character, he would definitely come after he knew it. Just say I don't have time. David waved his hand. Soon the men went out. Outside the villa, Wu Lui and Wudong were waiting anxiously outside, holding a very delicate gift box in his hand. Seeing that the person who notified the report came out, Wu Lui hurried forward. Little brother, what did Mr. Chen say? Mr. Chen doesn't have time. After his subordinates finished speaking, they closed the door of the villa. Wu Lui and Wudong were outside, and they were a little dumbfounded for a while. Dad, then, what shall we do? Wudong asked cautiously. Snapped. Wu Lui directly gave Wudong a big mouth. Kneel down for me, keep kneeling here, kneel until Mr. Chen sees us. How dare Wudong not listen, he hurriedly knelt at the door, while Wu Lui returned to the car and waited quietly. At night, there was a sudden thunder and lightning, and the rain poured down. Wu Lui sat in the car and looked at Wudong, who was kneeling in the rain, with no expression on his face. The next day, after the rain in the sky, a rainbow rose from the sky. Beautiful. Sonia and Ji Linger looked at the rainbow and shouted happily. David was breathing in the yard and moved his body. A subordinate came over and whispered a few words in David's ear. David was stunned for a moment, and then a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Go out and have a look. The door of the villa opened, and after David walked out, he saw Wudong still kneeling on the ground, and his body was wet. Seeing David coming out, Wu Lui hurriedly greeted him. Mr. Chen, the dog is ignorant. Offending Mr. Chen is a crime that deserves death. I hope that Mr. Chen can spare the dog's life. Wu Lui said, and hurriedly handed over the gift box. David didn't need to look at it, he could feel the fluctuation of the spiritual energy inside, and knew what it was. Patriarch Wu is being polite, it's just a small misunderstanding, you don't have to be so polite, take young Masterling back, and you won't catch a cold. David laughed, took the gift and handed it to his subordinates. Seeing David say this, Wu Lui was overjoyed and nodded again and again. Okay, thank you Mr. Chen for your generosity, I will hold a banquet in the humble house at noon, I hope Mr. Chen can appreciate it. Chapter 408. Okay, I'll be there at noon. David nodded. David needed a thoughtful person like Wu Lui to do things, so he agreed to go to the Wu family. Then I'll wait for Mr. Chen at home. Wu Lui took Wu Dong and left, and Wu Dong was almost collapsed at this time. Shortly after Wu Lui left, Lin Tianyu and Chifeng came. Seeing the eyes of the two, the corner of David's mouth raised slightly, it was obvious that the two were interested in each other. Palace Master, Yao Wangfu has sent someone to urge the balance of the medicinal materials, saying that the medicinal materials have been prepared, just wait for the balance to arrive, and then send the goods. Kai Feng whispered to David. Well, I will try my best to prepare. You sell all the properties of the Zhang family at a low price, return the funds, keep this villa, and see how much money you can raise. David frowned slightly. In a short period of time, it is really a bit tricky for David to gather billions of dollars. He doesn't have any business now, so he just sells some small return pills. Now the sales volume of small return pills is not very large, and David has not had any business during this time. Time to refine Xiao Huan Dan. Although Juitong and Chifengtang are not small, they are gangs after all, and there are not many properties under their names. Besides, there are thousands of brothers to support, and they can't make much money at all. Yeah. Chifeng nodded, but these things will be difficult to do in a short period of time, and it will take time, but I have already sent someone back to the Yaowangfu, within a few days of grace. Palace Master, otherwise I will sell all the properties of the Jui Hall in Horrendal, and I can collect some money. Anyway, there are some rabble in my Jui Hall. When I got to the provincial capital, I found out that I am a joke. Lin Tianyu followed David and said. David glanced at Lin Tianyu and smiled lightly, you also want to come to the provincial capital for development. Lin Tianyu looked at David's expression, his face suddenly turned red, and he didn't know what to say. Chifeng lowered his head slightly and laughed secretly. In the case of Juitong, you can find a trustworthy person to take care of it. This time, after the medicinal materials of the Yaowangfu arrive, I will refine a medicinal pill for you, and try to make your strength break through in the shortest possible time. David understood what Lin Tianyu meant and knew that he wanted to stay in the provincial capital for development. After all, Chifeng was in the provincial capital, and Chifeng's strength was much higher than his. As a big man, Lin Tianyu's face was somewhat ugly. Really? Lin Tianyu was suddenly pleasantly surprised. Thank you so much, Hall Master. You follow me, of course I won't let you be inferior to others, or would it be embarrassing for our dragon sect? David got up and patted Lin Tianyu's shoulder with a smile. Hey, if only you knew where the other halls are, there are 13 halls in total, and you can definitely make money. Lin Tianyu suddenly sighed. Okay, just do your best. I'll find a way about money. Go ahead and visit the market here. Everything is pretty good. David smiled and waved his hand. Chifeng blushed and walked out, while Lin Tianyu gave David a grateful glance, and followed him out. Chifeng and Lin Tianyu walked back, David frowned slightly, billions of money, this is not a small amount, where to get it? If there is really no other way, you can only follow your father-in-law Reuben for help. However, although the Su family is the richest man in Horrendal, they do not necessarily have much funds. The rest are assets. Time. At noon, Wu Lui sent a car to pick up David, and it was Wu Dong. At this time, Wu Dong had already changed his clothes, and his face was much better. Seeing David coming out, Wu Dong immediately opened the car door respectfully. Mr. Chen, please get in the car. Chapter 409. David nodded and sat in the car, while Wu Dong drove cautiously towards the Wu family. Wu Dong's temperament is arrogant and domineering, but in the face of absolute strength, he can only serve respectfully. Even his father is polite to David, how can he dare to be disrespectful? When the car was driving on the road, Wu Dong's phone rang, but he didn't dare to answer it, but secretly glanced at David. David smiled helplessly. Just answer the call, I'm not a devil. When David said this, Wu Dong answered the phone. Master Wu, Boss Feng has arrived at the port, the rough stones have already started to be loaded into the truck, and they can come to us in the afternoon. Said the person on the phone. Okay, I got it. Wu Dong said that he was about to hang up the phone, but the other party immediately said, Master Wu, then Boss Feng said that this batch of rough stones is Hengshan stone, and asks you to prepare more money. Hengshan stone. Wudong was stunned for a moment, and then his face was a little excited. No problem, let him transport all the rough stones, don't share them with others. After hanging up the phone, Wudong's face was still full of excitement. Looking at Wudong's excited look, David felt a little curious, so he asked, "What is this Hengshan stone?" "Oh, Mr. Chen doesn't know, this Hengshan stone is the rough stone produced on Hengshan Mountain, because the shipment rate of this kind of rough stone is high, and most of the precious gems such as Imperial Green and Red Flame Red are made of this kind of Hengshan stone. So the price of the original stone will be higher, but if you can get this kind of stone in your hand, if you are lucky, even if you open it yourself, you can make a lot of money." Wudong excitedly followed David's introduction. It could be seen that Wudong still had some research on the rough stone, and he was not a useless son. If it can improve the shipment rate of rough stones, that is, if 100% of gems can be produced, how much money can this thing make? David suddenly became interested in gambling stones. He seemed to see a way to make money. How could someone open a 100% gem, if this is? Wudong said, suddenly stunned, and then looked at David through the rearview mirror in surprise, because he suddenly thought of what happened yesterday. David Pink just randomly picked 10 pieces out of the waste rock, and even 5 pieces were found with gems. Although the remaining 5 pieces were not opened, Wudong seemed to understand something. "Mr. Chen, if you can get 100% gems, then this business will be a huge profit. It is no exaggeration to become the richest man in the country," Wudong said excitedly. "This is a good way to make money." David nodded. Mr. Chen, if you know how to select rough stones, then we can work together. I can give you 50% of the shares. No, 80%, I only need 20% of the shares. That's all right, Mr. Chen only needs to come to the original stone and inspect the goods. Wudong's heart was pounding. If he could pick out 100% of the rough stones containing precious stones, even if it was 20% of the shares, wouldn't he have made a fortune? Pick out some good rough stones and make them yourself, and then take some junk to sell them in gambling stone shops, and let those stone gamblers go to gamble, and you can make another money. You trust me so much. David laughed. Trust, with the hand that Mr. Chen showed yesterday, the entire stone gambling world can't find a master with such a unique vision. Wudong nodded quickly. Well, I'm also short of money, so I'll cooperate with you. David nodded. Thank you, Mr. Chen, thank you, Mr. Chen. Wudong was ecstatic in his heart, and hurriedly thanked him. When Wudong brought David to Wu's house, Wu Lui had already brought someone to wait at the door. Seeing David coming, Wu Lui personally stepped forward to help David open the door. Chapter 410. Entering the Wu family hall, David found that Wu Lui had already prepared a very rich luncheon. After David was invited to the main seat, the others dared to sit down. Patriarch Wu is too polite, it's just a light meal, why make it so grand? David looked at a table of food and said with a faint smile. Mr. Chen admires his face, how dare I neglect? Wu Lui said, and got up and poured a glass of wine for David. Wudong, if you don't respect Mr. Chen, follow Mr. Chen to make amends. Wu Lui said to Wudong after pouring David a glass of wine. No, there's no big deal, you don't need to make amends again and again, it makes me look like a stingy person. David waved his hand and said. Yes. Wu Lui nodded again and again. Mr. Chen doesn't know anything, I'm a rebel, I've been disobedient since I was a child, I'm lazy by nature, and have no talent for practicing, but I'm interested in some broken stones all day long. After this time, I will let him close the gambling stone shop, and he will never touch those big stones for me again. Dad, I know I was wrong. I will definitely change my arrogant and domineering temper in the future, but don't let me close the store. When Wudong heard this, he immediately said anxiously. Shut up for me, this time thanks to Mr. Chen's magnanimity, or else you will lose your life and open a shitty gambling stone shop. In the future, stay at home for me, and you are not allowed to go anywhere. Wu Lui glared at Wudong angrily and reprimanded loudly. Dad, my shop can't be closed. Why can't it be closed? Wu Lui roared. Because my gambling stone shop also has shares in Mr. Chen, and now Mr. Chen is the boss, so I can't close it. Wudong suddenly remembered the matter of giving David 80% of the shares, and immediately said to Wu Lui. Wu Lui was stunned, and looked at David with a puzzled face. David nodded and said, Wudong is right, I do plan to invest in his gambling stone shop. Everyone has their own aspirations, and their talents are different, not everyone is suitable for martial arts. I think Wudong is in the gambling stone shop. On the other hand, he is very talented. In this case, then I can rest assured. With Mr. Chen in charge, I believe that the dog can also do business honestly. Wu Lui didn't expect David to partner with Wudong to do business, but in this way, the relationship between David and the Wu family is one step closer. The banquet started, and people kept toasting David, but David refused to come. However, during the banquet, Wu Lui seemed to have something on his mind, and kept looking out the door with a worried expression. Patriarch Wu, if you have something to do, then I will say goodbye first. Looking at Wu Lui's appearance, David said. No, Mr. Chen, don't misunderstand. Wu Lui saw that David had misunderstood, and hurriedly explained, I have a son who has been practicing martial arts outside. Mr. Chen gave some pointers, but this guy hasn't arrived yet. Wu Lui said with a look of anger on his face. Practicing martial arts abroad. With the skills of the Wu family master, do you still need to send your son out? David felt a little surprised. How to say, Wu Lui is also a master of internal strength, a person who can be ranked in the provincial capital, and even uses his son to practice outside. Wu Lui smiled bitterly. Mr. Chen doesn't know anything. As far as I am capable, I can still make a shot in the provincial capital, but when I go out of Zhongbei, it is nothing. You must know that there are many masters in the martial arts world. What did Grandmaster Jin calculate? Could it be that there are still masters above you? David was a little surprised. After all, he is not a person in the martial arts world, and he does not cultivate qi, so he does not know.